powerful and simple. That's very important. Not just powerful, but also simple they are. I mean, when I show you the code, you'll see just a couple of lines of code, and you'll have so many features, so many functionality. And what are PWAs and modern day web apps? Before that, about me, I am Mukul, full stack developer at Node Experts. We are a small group of passionate JavaScript, or should I say ECMAScript? I leave it up to you. ECMAScript developers. These are some of the techs I've worked on so far. In college, I used to work on Java, and after college, I switched to JavaScript, ECMAScript, sorry. Now I work on Node.js and its frameworks, Meteor and MeanStack. You guys can find me on Twitter at redmukul1904. And before I start, let me just say why I chose this topic for this year's JSChannel. When I was going to prepare my proposal, I was thinking to give something like NodeBots or IoT, but just before that, I attended a workshop in Noida, JS Lovers, and it was a code lab of service workers. And that's when I saw how simple these things are, and I was like, whoa, holy crap, how I never heard of this. I mean, it's so simple, right? So that's when I decided I want to share this with you guys, and thanks JSChannel for having me here today, and thanks for giving me this opportunity. So actually, I was just showing my deck to a couple of guys last couple of days, and everyone said, Mukul, what is this modern day web apps? So just to clear that confusion with you guys, I just added these 2 slides. Modern day web apps, nothing, it's progressive web apps, PWAs, right? We all know what PWAs are. For those who don't know, PWAs are web apps which gives you native features like Android and iOS, but you don't have to install them. These are simple web apps. And they give you a very important functionality which become very popular in the last couple of years, which is offline behavior or offline browsing. I believe that user experience is much more important than user UI. UX is must right now, these days especially. I mean, customers have so many choice for the same kind of features and functionality. We have to give them the best user experience, right? And one kind of user experience is giving them content 24/7, no matter they have network or not, right? So offline browsing is when network is not there, you still give them something. Chrome knows it. See, let's see how big score I make. I don't think it'll be that big. See? So there are a lot of tech giants which are already switching to PWAs, Wikipedia, Twitter, Alibaba, ALI Express. So why they are switching? There must be a reason. I mean, when somebody switches to something, when they already have their native apps, but they are making some hard work to make their PWAs, there must be a reason, right? So why PWA, right? That's the question you guys must be asking. And there's a popular saying that necessity is mother of all inventions, right? So what are those necessities? Let's see. Go one by, let's see, okay. Just like I said, we can use PWAs without internet. They give us offline browsing. And when they give us offline browsing, obviously our data saves. How? I'll be showing you in a couple of code examples, how they save users' data. Actually, these are statistics by Wikipedia. When they released their PWA, their data got saved by consumer around 50%. That's a great stat. That's, I think, more than one reason to switch to PWA. One more thing is, they can be simply developed in JavaScript. You want your Android app, you have to use Java. For iOS, Objective-C, different text. Of course, there is Xamarin and all other, there is Ionic, in which you can just one language and build your hybrid app. But here, here you are making your web app, which will give you native features to iOS users, Android users, and you can just develop simply using JavaScript. Right? That's one huge advantage for me. Another thing is, PWAs can be monetized. It can go a little confusing here. You guys can say, Mukul, Android apps can be monetized. iOS apps can be monetized, right? I mean, we can see ads on them. Yes, we can. But they are a little SDK dependent. I can't have all kind of ads on an Android app. But when I have a web app, I have full power. I can add any kind of app and still give native features. And we all know how monetization is important, right? It is important. So service workers. PWAs are nothing web apps until we use service workers in them. Service workers is what make a web app a modern day web app. So let's talk about a little about service worker. Service worker considered like this. When a client, a browser, makes a request to a server, it goes directly to server and the server responds to it, processes some data and all that. But when you use service worker, there is a man in the middle. It intercepts every request made by client, the page which is using service worker, and then sends that request for you to that server. Actually, there's a disadvantage here, but I'll talk about later about that. So just keep note of that. That there's a man in the middle, service worker, which is intercepting your every request, right? It's nothing but a network proxy. So even if there's no network, it can still catch your request and respond according to that. It can check if network is there or not. And one more great thing about it is promises and event-based. I think promises and events help us in a lot of ways, like when you are caching your data, or when you're checking if network is not there or not, right? So it can give you a response according to that. Service worker use cases. There are many use cases. When I was making especially this slide, I was like 20 or 25 features, then I have to come down to it because I know I won't have that much time. So one is push notification. Push notification, a couple of years ago, if someone asked me, Mukul, how would you give push notification? I give native apps, but not anymore. I mean, these PWAs can give push notification using notification service of JavaScript, which can be used by service worker. Because service worker is nothing but it's a JavaScript service. You don't have to install anything. You don't have to add anything. It's already provided by JavaScript. API logging. From API logging, I mean, in one of my projects, I actually used API logging. So I was logging my APIs on server side. But then I thought if client is making a request, and it's already intercepted by a business logic like service worker, why can't they create a log there, right? Virtual server is kind of like API logging. Virtual server is where I put all my business logic on the service worker, so my all JavaScript, app-related JavaScript files are only DOM related. They can only manipulate DOM. Background sync. Background sync is, I think, very crucial feature these days. It's not fully developed yet. It's still work in progress, but it's very important. Let me tell you why. These days, just like I said, UX is very important. So we don't want user to wait to happen to do something. User wants to send a message, let them send it. If network is not there, we'll send for him later, whenever network is there. We don't want to put that pressure on user. It's our job to check if network is there or not, if his battery life is correct or not, if that message will hurt his battery life or not, right? So these features are not there yet, but they are in progress. That is periodic background sync, but background sync is there. So background sync, what it does, it's enqueues all the events which user have made, and when network is there, it pushes those events. Actually, there's one more feature which I'm forgetting, which is quite popular, offline browsing. That is why service became popular in the first place, right? So far, so good, right? So many features, so many good things. But when I say but, right? Everything before but is, So I won't say that things I'm going to say are disadvantages or even limitations. These are just a couple of things you have to keep in mind when working on service workers. Because service worker is quite new concept. It just has replaced app cache service. I don't know how many of you work on app cache, but it was a service also used for creating cache, but it wasn't that good. And it was using XML, which is very hard to debug, for me at least. So browser compatibility, that is very important. So Chrome, I think the latest Chrome supports all the latest services of service workers. Mozilla supports it. Opera don't support all, but it supports some. Edge doesn't support it yet, but it's currently in development mode. And Safari don't support it yet, but it's under their five years plan. But those browsers don't have any choice. Service workers have become way too popular for them to ignore it. So most of the browsers support it, so I don't think you will have any problem using service workers. Next thing, what I'm going to say is very important when you're using service worker. And it means service worker is good, and they're actually great, but they can be a little dangerous if used insecurely. Let me tell you why. So just a couple of minutes back, I told you that the traditional approach is you have a client, you have a server, and client makes a request to server. But now, because of service workers, you have a man in the middle. There are man in the middle attacks. And we call service worker man in the middle. So is it good? Because actually holding your request. Yes, you have coded it, you have all control of service worker, I got it, yes. But what if some hacker or someone just got control of your service worker? It's actually intercepting all the requests made by user, even credentials and all those things. So that's what they did. It's HTTPS only. Until your page is hosted on HTTPS, you can't use service worker. During development, you can use localhost, but when you go production, you have to use HTTPS. So it's like a certain wall from a certain show which don't allow white walkers to go south. Okay. Okay, you guys gonna kill me for this. Spoiler alert. Unlike that wall, you can't go pass around it. Those who will get it, they wanna kill me, I know. Okay, offline experience. So I said offline experience, service workers provide offline experience, but how? So let's say that's you, it's a user, that's you guys, okay? So you open your mobile or web app, something like that, right? Whenever you open your mobile app, it will install the service worker. And I'll talk about life cycles a couple of minutes later. So a service worker can interact back with your PWA, right? So your PWA and service worker are working. Your PWA is what making your web app a modern day web app. So let's say, and your service worker have a cache, right? It's a app cache, let's say. So there can be two cases. Either you are online, either you have network available, or you don't, right? So let's talk about the simple way, online. You are online, you have network, but request will still go to server, and this is, this is a server. Your request will still go to man in the middle, service worker, and service worker will check if network is there or not. In our case, network is there, so it will just revert that request to server, and server will respond back. So that is simple, right? But what if we are offline? Service worker knows you are offline. It will try to make request and get an error. So what now? It will check cache and return something. Now you can ask, what is in cache? I mean, if there is a page which I never opened, there is no cache of it, right? So what can we do in that case? If cache is not available, we can check for cache for a particular request. If for this request, if we have response available, we can return it. If we don't, we can return something like a game, like Chrome does it, something like which user already have, some post which you already have, right? This is how offline experience work for user. How push notifications work? Actually, little off the topic. How many of you have seen the Dunkirk yet? Any of you seen Dunkirk? Okay. I haven't got the chance to see Dunkirk yet. So I'm a huge Christopher Nolan fan. So a couple of nights back on Netflix, I was just checking his movie Memento. So taking inspiration from that, let's do thing in reverse. So instead of showing user, I have a server. This is GCM, that is Google messaging service, which is used for push notifications. There is service worker. There is your web app. So what will happen? Server will send a message whenever, let's say, your server have a new block, right? So it will send through, I use Node.js. So in Node.js, I use socket.io. So let's say using socket.io communicated with your Google Cloud Messaging service, your GCM service. GCM service will interact with service worker. Now that's one very little detail here. So, and that's quite good. Your service worker don't work till it's called upon. It's sleeping until you actually call it, right? So that saves your battery life a lot. It's not working if you're not using it, because ideally, how many push notifications you're gonna get in a day, right? So that's a good thing. And your push notification will get to your mobile app via service worker. I have a code snippet for that. We'll talk about that. So life cycle and events. Service workers have basically three life cycle events: registration, installation, and activation. So let's talk about registration first. So that's a very basic example. I said it, right, that you will just have to use a couple of lines which will give you amazing power or amazing features. So that's it. This one line, and you are able to register your service worker. So how service worker works? You have your main.js, let's say your apps JavaScript file. And there's another JavaScript file, serviceworker.js. In that case, it's in the same directory as main.js. You can put it anywhere. So what I'll do is navigator.serviceworker.register. Navigator is a JavaScript object. And I'm using a check here, service worker in Navigator. I think it's a good practice to use it because, like I said, there are some browsers which don't support it yet. So it's a good practice. If your browser supports service worker, only then run that service worker code, otherwise it's useless. Another thing is this service worker.register. It registers your service worker file. And service worker always run in a different context, in a different thread, in a non-blocking different thread. It never communicates with the DOM of the page, right? Scope is a field, it's optional actually. If you don't give it, this is default value. So what you tell service worker by using scope property is that this is the directory you'll use for my pages, right? So all the pages, all the files, all the HTML files, all the JS files, which come under this directory will use service worker. So every request made by those files will be intercepted by this service worker. Let's say if I have used /www/js, right? So any request made by www/css, let's say that directory made the request, service worker won't intercept it. So scope basically tells the scope of service worker, which files it will use to intercept requests. That is it. That is how you register your service worker. Now, one question they should come is that, this browser will register every time I open that page? Right, so there's another good thing is that browser will detect if service worker is installed, registered or not. See, every service worker have two properties, name and version. If your browser finds that that service worker is already installed or registered, it will skip that process. If it finds a different version, it registers it, right? The next step after registration is installation. Like I said, it's event-based. So once an event happens, it will go for a callback, and the next event is installation. Now check the file. That file was main.js. This is serviceworker.js. So now we are on service worker's playground. So like we are adding an event install. So whenever service worker initiates the install event, you'll go into this block. There are a couple of things you can do in this block. I'm doing here caching. So what I'm doing is cache.addAll. It's a cache service function. So what I'll do is I'll use cache version. Cache version is my service worker's version 1. If that's it, your assets to cache. It could be your JavaScript file, CSS, images, fonts, any kind of assets you want to cache. So in this step, you can cache all those assets and remove all those assets if you need, if you're using different version. Or a better event will be this, activation. During activation, let's say you have a service worker version 1, and now you created another service worker version 2, right? So until your 2 is activated, still their 1 is working. So even your web page is making request, service worker version 1 is intercepting it, right? So what we can do in activation is remove all the cache which was stored by installation step of service worker version 1, right? So these 3 events are compulsory which service worker will do. Now these 2 are functional events. It means they will only take place when some event happens by a web page. This is a fetch event. Fetch is a JavaScript service which every client makes when it tries to interact with network. So every time a client or your web page will make a request to network, it will go into this block. Now what I'm doing here is event.respond with. So what I'm doing is I'm responding here with an event. Yeah, fetch event.request. Object can have the request. So event.request is the request that your web page has made. So okay, what I'm checking is if catch. So if network is there, it will return the request. If it's not there, it will give an error. It will drop in catch block, and it will return cache.match, which I just told you earlier. If there is a response available for that request, it will match that cache and return it, right? But what if it's not there? We can do at some different conditions. If it's not there, return some game or return some block, right? Another event is push event. So this will only happen when your GCM or any service you are using for push messaging initiates this. So every time your GCM awakens your service worker, this event will fire. Event would not wait until your GCM key is registered, and it will use title, body, and icon, all these small properties, for creating a show notification. So that's it. 4 lines of code, and you have added push notification in your web app. No need to use native apps, no use to install them, uninstall them. Every native feature, you can, not every, almost every native feature you can use in your PWS using service worker. There is another event, sync, which I haven't added in it. Sync is also like this. So every time your web page got connected to network and there are some events already in its queue, it will fire that sync event and sync with the network. Now, I think there are some performance boosts the service workers already gives us. Always usable app. One thing I hate, one thing I used to hate, even I hate now when I use some apps, is when I get that loading screen for 5 minutes, and after that say no network available. I mean, I was waiting for 5 minutes and now you're telling me no network available. I hate loading icon, loading screen. So I believe never stop your user. I mean, the user is already busy. He has already many choices. Don't force him to uninstall you. So always usable app is very important. Quick request handling, how? So what another application is, we can return some cached response even if network is there. Even if network is there, just return the cached response and still make that request. And when you get that response, return it. So user will have latest response in couple of seconds, but even before that, he will have his old response. So user won't have to wait at least. That's another application. And this one is very important, which I'm going to show you. User experience. So not every one of us can be Benedict Cumberbatch of Sherlock, like he can just analyze an app and find content. So we want content to come to us. We don't want to look over a site and find which kind of content I want. I want to subscribe to application, and I want content to come to me, which service worker has enabled me to do. Now, I believe growth is important, and service worker is in very early state. So these are some of the features I want to have as early as possible in service worker. Otherwise, there are many things which service worker can have. The reason I added Chrome extension support first, because a couple of weeks back, I was working on a Chrome extension with Node experts, and I tried to use service workers without doing some research, and hard way I learned the service workers don't support, Chrome extension don't support service worker yet. I mean, if they have, it will be much easier for me. So Chrome extension support I really want. Browser support and API. Safari and Edge are not using, and they have to. I mean, they don't have any other option. Periodic background sync, which I already told you about. So what periodic background sync does, it like periodic, on every particular time of period, it makes a request, but it also checks your battery life, your network, to see if that request should be made. Because there's a function, navigator.online. I hate that function. You know why? It returns true or false. If you have network, it returns true. If you don't, it returns false. But it don't check if I have that strong network to make a request. It will return me true, even if I have a 1 bar of signal. That's what periodic background sync is trying to resolve. It will check if you have enough network to make a request, and only make then. Because every time you make a request, your battery life goes, your battery life goes. Main thing is that, and no one wants that, right? So thank you, guys. That's it from me. Thank you. I would love to have some questions.
Hello.
Hi.
My question is on the background sync. How do we, is there a way to enqueue and dequeue the request made when the user is offline?
Yeah, you have to write logic for it. There is no service yet, but they are working on a service that will give you a queue to add all events, but I don't think they will release it around after 3 or 4 years. So one thing I have done this is, I actually used an array, a simple queue data structure in JavaScript, and every request I was making, Using event.request, I was storing in a queue. And I was checking whenever a network comes, I will make those requests. That's how I added sync.
Is there any library that we can use for it?
I don't know of.
Okay.
Maybe there is, but I haven't checked if there's library for making queues. Actually, it's quite simple. You can just simply make a queue for that.
Okay, thank you.
No.
Hi, Manoj. Thanks for the insight on service workers. Actually, I'm a bit confused. Do you recommend the app-based native application or web-based app?
It depends on the.
If you can answer me in two terms, that is security and maintenance, that would be great.
In respect of security.
Security and maintenance of the code.
Security and maintenance of code.
Which would you recommend, the web app or the native apps?
Like I said, it depends on the requirement. If you want to give push notification in the offline browsing, if your app is like more like a blog post, I think PWA will work, web app will work, because it will behave exactly like a native app and still give you web app features. But if you are making something very complicated, like which uses webcam and a lot of other stuff, or you need more performance, which you can use from your native core, so you can use native apps. Actually, a couple of months ago, I read a blog on native app versus hybrid apps. It's kind of like same. If you want quick coding and quick production, you can go for hybrid apps like Ionic. But if you want really strong performance, really good UI, native APIs, you should go for React native APIs.
Thank you.
React Native fan is there some. Ah.
My question is like, we have GCM, right?
Sorry.
Hello? Yeah. What are the different messaging services we have? Like GCM one we have for push notification.
Push notification, I've only used GCM.
Apart from that, do we have?
Apart from that?
Yeah.
I have to check, but I don't know any. GCM is, I think, more than enough. Do you have any something against GCM?
No, I just used GCM, so I just want to know any other alternative is there or not.
I have to Google it. Alternatives for GCM.
Okay.
Hello. Hi, Mukul.
Hi.
Nice talk, by the way. I have two questions. The first one is, how do you invalidate the cache?
How to use?
Invalidate the cache.
Sorry, come again.
I mean, cache buster, I would say.
Caching?
The cache used by local service workers.
So what JavaScript gives is it gives a cache service. So service worker is nothing, it just uses multiple JavaScript services. For push notification, it uses notification service. For cache, it uses cache service, which JavaScript already provides us. So basic advantage of service worker is it keeps running in a separate thread. That's what the real advantage of service worker is. It uses all those JavaScript services, but keeps running in parallel, which app cache or previous services before service worker never gave. Running in parallel in different thread.
Okay, and this cache is stored differently. It's not stored in local storage, right?
Differently.
I mean, for example, right now, how would I do is, if I am using Redux, I would check if the data, what I want, if it's in Redux store, which is fetched from local storage, then I don't make an API call. Otherwise, I would fetch the data from API call and populate the Redux store. So, wherein I use the local forage where it will use IndexedDB or some async storage. So if I use service workers, then I have cache from the service workers, right?
Yeah,
so I'm not sure whether which uses which storage.
Getting it. Cache uses cache storage, local storage of browser. And if you want your data to be persisted, you can use IndexedDB. If you want your data to be persisted. Okay. So idea what you're saying about Redux, I've never used Redux, but what you're saying, I think idea is same. They're all doing same things. But if you want your data to be persisted, you can use IndexedDB.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mukul.
we are going to break for 15 minutes.